Just a sync clap in front of both your faces. That's good.
They were synchronised.
All good, yeah. That was the most synchronised sync clap.
Actually, it was synchronised, huh? Telepathy.
Yeah.
We've got it, haven't we? It's in our DNA.
Yeah.
Our genes.
Mm-hmm.
It's good, isn't it?
You had a good shave this morning.
Yeah. What do you think? Well, hello and welcome to Formula for Success. Fucked it up straight away.
Oh, you are such a dick.
We don't need the intro again, do we? I can just go with that. Here we go, in one. Easy. You ready? Can I go? Hello and welcome to Formula for Success with me, David Coulthard, and as ever, I'm joined by a man who needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. He is a former Formula One team boss, he's an entrepreneur, a musician, as we just heard with that fantastic intro music, which I'm going to ask him in a moment to name. He's a raconteur, he's a world-class blagger, and now a podcaster.
Oh, my word.
He is Eddie Jordan.
David, what are you trying to do to me here? No one will have anything to do with me in the future if you keep going on with words like that. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, hello all you people out there, and welcome again to Formula for Success.
Only you could be happy with being named as a blagger.
I think it's great. It was something I always wanted to be Achiever is a blagger. Because effectively, that's what Irish people do, isn't it?
Bit of blagging.
They remove money from one person's wallet into yours, and that's called blagging.
Well,
I was good at it.
You have done that exceptionally well, and it does pain me to credit you with having produced, along with, I guess, some of the Robbers. You've got Eddie and the Robbers. The opening music there, it's really catchy. I try not to show my appreciation, but it's difficult not to move. So
David,
does it have a title?
Well, I was thinking about that because obviously the great music that we played from Fleetwood Mac for many of the years that we were in BBC together, we called that was The Chain. I think along that theme, I think we call this the anchor, not necessarily the anchor from one piece to another or the anchor in the sea or whatever. Let people make their own decision. I'd like to call it the anchor.
Right, okay. Jeez. You've given that some thought, haven't you?
No, you asked me about 2 seconds ago and I said, Jesus, what am I going to say to this guy here?
All right, the anchor it is, and we love it, we do. So as we speak, we're sitting in our familiar residence here in London. We should really name check where we are because you managed to blag us a bit of space in this fine facility to do the podcast.
This is honestly, it's my favourite hotel. The fact that a friend of mine owns it has nothing to do with it. I stay here. It's so convenient and so close, and it has got all the amenities. I just had to ask him, would they facilitate us with these people here in Whisper and put the show on today? And they were absolutely a drop of a hat. It happened. It is the Kensington Hotel, and it's in South Kensington. It's just a 2-second walk from South Kent Tube Station.
Fantastic. Do you tube very often?
I'm a big tuber.
I accidentally got on a train from Heathrow yesterday because I flew down from Scotland and I had to go into near Soho, and I got confused with what do you call it, Heathrow Express, which I've never used, and just what the normal trains are. And I ended up stopping at every single stop on the Piccadilly line. It was longer than if I'd taken a horse from Heathrow.
It's 55 minutes. You try and do it in a taxi. Try and do it in an Uber. Try and do it in any other form of transport, unless you take a bicycle, and then that's 3 or 4 hours. Nevertheless, that train from me, I love it. Not as posh as you. I landed in Gatwick yesterday, and I made a complete cock up because I wanted the first train to London. Jumped on it, only to find it didn't stop in Victoria. It was going to London Bridge, and I don't know where London Bridge is, so I had to get off.
It's over the Thames.
And get on the other track and get one into Victoria. Then I got the tube to South Kent, so everybody's happy.
Well, yeah, but we're not very good at it, are we?
Well, I'm not very good at looking at signs in front of trains, I must say. I usually have
You know, have a man
jumped on the
servant.
first one. What?
You don't have a manservant that sort of guides you around.
No, I leave that to you. But I gave that up when I was, when I'm 75. When I gave that up at about 60, having my driver and, of course, the pilot and all of this. When you tot up what you have to lose in terms of your income and then pay the tax and pay the NIP or whatever it is, national insurance contributions, and I'm telling you what, everybody has to sit down and think about where the pennies are going now.
Yeah, well, it is, definitely difficult times for some, but you pleading poverty, honestly, that's not going to bring a tear to my eye.
Well, I think it should, because I wouldn't be here unless I needed the money to do this podcast.
You know you're not getting paid for this.
That's actually untrue, I think. I just hope. I better have a word with your boss.
Well, you might have been promised.
Oh, you are the boss, aren't you?
You might have been promised you're getting paid, but only upon transfer.
Come on, roll it on.
Okay, well, look, we're going to move this along to taking some listeners' questions in due course. But before that, we need one of your celebrity stories, because even if it's not true, I just love watching you make them up. So have you got a celebrity story this week?
I have a cracker for us today.
Is it true, this one?
Probably not, but this one is true. Unlike
Only
the
you
others.
can contradict yourself in one sentence.
Unlike the others, come on. This is somebody that I would say 99% of the world music people who like music will know exactly who this is, and certainly everyone.
Who do you know
Britain.
is in music that doesn't like music?
Well, you're not great at music. Your rhythm and your tempo is.
But I'm not in music.
Listen,
I'm not.
I want to tell you the story. Can I tell the story?
Okay, after you.
Without interruption.
Okay, sorry.
So this is a person who, about 30 years ago, I met in Ireland when I had a horse, and he was interested in horses.
You had a horse?
I had a couple of horses, with Mouse Morris, who was a great trainer, and particularly one horse called Rostroprovich, won a whole load of Group 2 races, and we brought it to Ascot and Cheltenham, and it also in Punchestown. It was a great horse. But anyway, during that time I met this guy who had moved from the UK to Ireland to live. He had some connections there, and his name was Ronnie Wood. Now, Ronnie Wood is obviously known now from the Stones, but in those days he wasn't with the Stones. He was with a guy called Jeff Beck. I'll come back to Jeff Beck because it's a wonderful story, and we just had a memorial for him because Jeff sadly died, and all of the big stars turned up for a big gig in the Royal Albert Hall. So that's another story. But anyway, Ronnie, roll that on after that, the horses. And I'm in Barbados, where a lot of the Irish convene from time to time, particularly at Christmas time.
That's where the treasure's buried, isn't it?
That is a really cool place. Dangerous place to go if you want to look after your liver, because it's not one of those, it's not liver friendly. So what we did was, I went for a walk most mornings like I tried to do, and wound up in this little bar up past Sandy Lane. And when I went into this bar to have a rum punch, I saw none other than Ronnie. And Ronnie was there, and we were chatting about things, and we walked back down the sand on the beach. And Ronnie was a great friend of George Harrison, as you will remember. And George had recently sent me a book called Wood on Canvas, which depicted and showed all the wonderful paintings that Ronnie had made. It was an absolutely sensational book. People should go and have a look, or Google it, or do anything. Have a look at what Ronnie Wood is able to do as a painter. I actually believe he's a far better painter than he is a musician, and I think the world of him as a musician. So that'll tell you what I think of him as a painter.
I have one of his pieces. I have Wild Horses.
You mentioned that. Please tell us about that.
I bought it at a charity event for that Rod Stewart was hosting, and he was in a band with Ronnie, was he not? Called Small Faces. Oh, the Faces.
No, not the Small Faces, the Faces.
Okay, the Faces, excuse me. And it was auctioned off, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
And he is an unbelievable talent.
Beautiful.
Well, this is a similar situation.
They do look more like llamas than horses, but nonetheless, it's a beautiful three-horse head llama type piece.
Yeah, because that is one of the things that he does. He does paint the members of the band. I have the picture that he did of Charlie Watts, which is amazing, in a brown pinstripe suit. But anyway, rolling this on. I said, listen, Ronnie, I'd like to commission a piece. And he said, oh, yeah, I'd like that. And he said, well, have you got any subject in mind? And I said, no, not really. And we're just as rambling down the beach. And here was John Magner, who owns Coolmore Stud, which is the great Galileo and all of the great horses from Coolmore Stud. This is John Magner. And he was having a foot massage by this guy called Bongo Man. He's kind of well known. And we decided, hey, Ronnie, what about Bongo Man? He said, perfect. And that's how the painting came by me. I paid 15 grand for it. He's tried to buy it back several times at, what's 100 times, 50 times the price. I just won't sell it. It's really something that I cherish. I love. It's in pride of place in our place in Monaco, and I absolutely love it. But there's lots of different stories about he's tried to take it away from me, or buy it back from me, I should say. But he's very happy that he knows that you have one of his paintings as well, and he has sent us a message. But
let's cue the tape. It's not tape.
Hey Eddie, this is Ronnie Wood. How you doing, my old pal? I'm glad that you and Dave have got a podcast going. I'm still painting. Thanks for collecting my artwork. And I look forward to hearing your show and seeing you soon. All right, buddy? Take care, Ronnie.
Ronnie! God, that's a man who's consumed quite a lot of cigarettes in his life. I mean, that is the rock and roll voice, isn't it? If ever you wanted a rock and roll voice, you want to replay that sound. That's just so cool. David, you must realise, and I realise, that we are the luckiest people on this planet, because we often push aside the value of sport and the value particularly of motor racing, but the ability in our sport to attract other people, particularly in the music industry, because it's the one sport that they like, and it's the one thing that, for example, I was in the sport of motor racing, and I always liked music, so it just was perfect for me that there was this interaction between both things.
Well, I think the reality, of course, and it's something that is questioned by the purists today, that the soundtrack of a high-performance car, whether it's a road car, whether it's a race car, it's music. It's beautiful. And it's one of the difficulties that electric formulas have, and it's one of the difficulties that manufacturers of electric cars are having right now. They're employing people to come up with an acoustic inside the car that is appealing to the driver when they're actually going along the road. But I think they actually need to consider something which is not as annoying as a reversing truck or a bus when it goes beep, beep, but they need something to sort of give us the sound of these vehicles when they're coming along the road, because I don't know about you, I've almost stepped out in front of a couple of...
I'm doing it. I have to be really careful because...
You've probably been pushed in front of a few cars.
You would like to do that, but that's why I would never travel on a tube with you, because I'd be afraid of where you might try and push me. Anyway... The thing is, look, I'm not a great lover of electric cars for a whole lot of reasons, and you've mentioned one of them, and that is that in recent times, the only time I've felt in danger or been run over has always been with an electric car, because you just don't hear them, and it's probably worse when they're reversing because you just don't expect it, and it's a nothing sound. And I think it's important for the manufacturers to have some element of sound, but also for the driver, because he needs to feel that excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe at this point we should move this along to taking some listener questions. And well, EJ, we've got a question from a couple of people here. One, Motorsport OG on Twitter, and another one, Daniel Button. They both want to know the answer to the same question, which was, who was the best driver you almost signed, meaning you were close, but for whatever reason it fell through? And that can be from your Formula 3 times, or it can be from Formula 1. Like, I'd love to imagine that you almost got close to signing Senna.
Well, why did you mention him? Because that's exactly who I'm going to talk about. In 1982, 1982, I had a guy called Jim Wright, who was my scout. I did things in a different way. I had Jim doing all the junior races to see who could I come up with for Formula 3, because I always felt that most of the drivers, and that's why Martin Brundle came to me, and Johnny Herbert and Jean Alesi, most of those drivers had very little money. But I was strong enough to be able to go out and find money to support the team and then try and pick the best driver. So Jim Wright said to me, God, Eddie, you need to see this guy called De Silva. And he had finished third in the Formula Ford Festival, so he was right up there. And then he was doing with Dennis Russian, he was Russian Green, doing Formula 4 2000. And I went to Snetterton to see him. And I remember putting a mark in my eye on the S's. David, you know the S's in in Snetterton. And it's a corner that most people can't take absolutely flat. But this guy was coming through there flat every time, and he never missed this mark with his front left tire. So as you turned it into the S's, and I said, whew, this guy seems to be right on the money in terms of control, understanding the speed, accuracy and repeatability. He was able to do this. He then went, and I said to him, I sent a note to him. His English wasn't perfect, and I asked him, would he like to have a test in a Formula 3 car? And he said he'd love to, but he was in Mallory Park the following Wednesday morning, and he could do the Wednesday afternoon at Silverstone on the club circuit if that was going to be possible, and could he bring his dad? I said sure. As it happened, James Weaver had been on pole in our car the previous Sunday, so we had a good setup and we had a car ready to go for him, and this guy came and jumped in the car. He absolutely equalled the time that James had pole, and usually, as you know, in Formula 3 the afternoon session is usually slower than the first one because of the crispness of the air going through that Venturi, which is a big factor in Formula 3. Anyway, we don't need to go in through that. What we need to say is that with Dick Bennett, which at the end of the year, I tried to sign him for the 83 season and I couldn't because he was a Marlboro driver. I hadn't got enough credits to my name, and Dick Bennett was the sort of the guru, as we all know, West Surrey Racing, and he was sent there by Marlboro. I tried desperately to sign him, but Dick and I joined together because I got the Marlboro deal for Macau, and we went there and he won Macau with Martin Brundle, our old pal, and he came too with a guy, Roberto Guerrero. Just to finish the story quickly, is that he changed his name after that race. He never drove Formula 3 again, and he changed his name to Senna. And then some time ago, after that, he was the one who put Barrichello into me, we always remained very good friends. And he was disillusioned at McLaren, and it was before he went to Williams, he just wasn't happy in some of the thing. And believe this or not, but I offered him 50% free of charge to come and drive for Jordan, but he would have to stay on as an owner because I believed with Senna in the team, the actual value of the team would be worth more than double. So in other words, the half that I was losing, I thought this would be such a cool stroke. I get a guy like Senna in my car, get the team, the recognition of the team, the sponsorship income would multiply by an amazing amount. But I always liked Ayrton, and I should have happened, but sadly he died. Now, I'm not saying that he would have done it, but we were very far into the negotiations about what he wanted to do. He wanted to have a team, and I was giving him that opportunity.
I think we could do a whole podcast on Ayrton because he's touched us all in different ways.
Yeah.
And I was the test driver, as you know, for Williams when he passed away, and you got to see him rise up through the ranks and then compete against him during your Jordan years. But yeah, he was an incredible individual. If we move on to another question from a chap called Jamie McRae, spelled slightly different to our old friend, of course, Colin McRae. But anyway, he is asking me, do I regret leaving a race seat at Red Bull just as it came good? Well, I don't. And I was talking about this yesterday because I'd run out of time, which basically means my talent was in the wane. And I think that arguably, if I could have stopped halfway through the 2008 season, it would have saved me and the team a bit of crash damage. Because in my experience, you don't lose the sort of, the speed as such, but the need, the absolute desire to fight over every thousandth of a second is what suddenly goes. And I liken it to what I imagine a boxer is like when he's young or when she's young and they're beginning of their career. They get knocked down occasionally. It's part of the sport, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I can't imagine any boxer's never, ever, in training or in a professional fight, had to put a knee down or stumbled or whatever. But when they're young and just fully energetic, they get up even when their eyes are spinning like, something out of a cartoon. And then you see them when they're later in their career and they're taking a beating and they go down, and you can kind of see the eyes come up and look around and think, this canvas is quite comfortable. I think I'll just stay here.
I'll hang in here.
Yeah, I'll wait here until I hear number 11 and I know the fight's over. So I think you lose that fighting spirit. So I basically got crashed out of my last Grand Prix in Brazil 2008 and never ever regretted that I was no longer a Grand Prix driver. The money is not quite as good in podcasting as it is in Formula One, as you're
That's
finding
why I'm
out.
surprised you're sitting here. Things must be grim if you're in here talking to me. But nevertheless, what I want to ask you, because this is a follow-on to that question, where do you think Fernando is finding this inner strength, this inner speed, this inner... he's speaking and talking as if he's 23.
Yeah, I think two reasons why he's like that. One, when he stepped away from Formula One the first time, he went straight into sports cars, IndyCar.
American.
He did the Dakar. He's got a kart track, and you see him out testing his karts at his facility in Spain. So the uninterrupted being in the mode of being a racing driver and all of the things that keeps sharp in your mind. You often use the expression, don't let the old man in.
Yep.
If you let the old man or the old woman in, that ultimately is what you end up becoming. But if you fight against that, and you keep a young spirit for as long as nature will allow. So I think in comparison to Michael, who stopped and no longer was racing, then went and played in motorbikes, and then had a crash and broke a vertebrae, then came back to Formula One, 3 years after he'd originally stopped. He could still go through the motions. He was still a incredible individual, but he just wasn't as good as he had been before. But he was in his 40s and the clock had moved. So I think, one, it was that uninterrupted nature of Fernando's time away from Formula One. And as we saw with Kimi as well, he went away rallying. I've got a rallying story for you, which I
love to hear.
I was with the Finnish world champion, Kalle Romalainen, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I was there with Mika in Sardinia last week, Mika Häkkinen, my old teammate, and we both were on a closed stage with this guy who at 22, he looks about 15, but he's the world champion. And I had to go 7 kilometers up this stage with him and then 7 kilometers back down. And I never have been so... I trust him, of course, but it's a rally stage and it's on gravel and there's trees. I've never been so scared and so wanting that thing to be over as in that moment. I quietly did the 7K up, and then he does the thing back down the hill. When I got to the bottom, he said, we're going to do another run. I undid my belts to make sure I was not doing another run. My old teammate Mika undid his belts when he got to the top.
Really? So
he couldn't do the 14K. Those guys are so talented. They have driving skills that make Formula One drivers look like amateurs. It's off the scale.
But to be fair, 90% of them are Finns. And they're used to driving on ice, and they have ice races and all of that. And I don't know whether you remember, but they used to have a world championship for ice racing in France with people like Prost and Jabouille and Tambay. Everyone used to race in these. And do you know what it does? It hones your skills up. I absolutely agree with that. Something in the winter when we used to have, if you like, a much shorter Formula One series than what it currently is available. So these drivers used to do, I think it was called the Andros Championship. It was massive. And you go to all the big top ski resorts and everything gets closed down and they built the circuit. Pure ice, absolutely fantastic. But that's why I think the Finns are so good, is because they have an ability with so little traction and so little grip that they're able to do amazing things.
Yeah, they are incredible. I realise at this point, I've spent so much time with you, I'm starting to become you, because I started answering 2 points on Fernando and I only gave one before I drifted off to tell another story. So coming back to the second reason why I think Fernando is so strong is he's angry. He's angry that he's only got 2 world championships, and that anger is what drives him to still have the need. And that's the key thing. When I said earlier, you don't lose the speed, you lose the need. He still has the need, and that is why he's able to do it.
You can never look backwards, and he has to ask himself, and he has to ask Flavio,
his manager, Flavio
Briatore, and I, and still are good friends. But have to remember, Fernando Alonso chased the money. He went to teams where he was getting more money than what he would have got in another team that probably has a better chance of him winning a world title. And he probably now regrets that because he's got so much money. And sometimes when you look back, you think that was a mistake. And if I was to say to Fernando, if he was sitting there opposite me, I think, Fernando, you made a mistake. You've still got a great legacy, twice world champion, but you in your heart know it could have been easy 5 or 6.
Yeah, because as we know from the musical world, it must be funny in a rich man's world, money. Absolutely. And also, you know what it can't buy you?
Absolutely.
Love.
Money.
Love. Money can buy you money, but money can't buy you love.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, love is something very close to your heart.
It is. I love to love.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a lot of affection for you right now.
No.
I'm just glad they've still got you chained to the wall, though, because I don't want you going all Tasmanian devil on me.
Actually, I did have a look at him.
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah,
you are like the Tasmanian
wild,
devil.
Isn't he?
Yeah,
he's wild. I like him.
When you're on the spoons, that's what you look like.
I like him.
Right, we're running out of time here, so I want to quickly get to this next one from a guy called CGM989 via Instagram, and he has come up with this point saying, both of you, so I'll go to you, EJ. What are your views on sports psychologists? And from the perspective of a driver and a team owner, he also puts that he pictures you as the Dalai Lama mixed with Sir Alex Ferguson's hairdryer. The hairdryer, yes, but the Dalai Lama, do you really have inner peace and you spread love?
All the time, David. That's why I'm here. So I'm the calm one here today. You're the one who's wired. I don't know where you've been last night, and I don't know where you've come from this morning, but you seem wired to me. You're on top form.
Yeah, I had a great weekend in Scotland.
People change, don't they? But we talk about motivation. I think it's a huge factor. It depends on the character of the driver. Invariably, we used to have a lot of young drivers. So there was very much putting your hand around them and making sure that they felt comfortable inside the team, that they had that motivation factor. And I always use a couple of sentences and beliefs that I had. Always believe that you're going to win or you can win. And I don't mean believe 99%. It has to be 100%. If you leave 1% out, that 1% is going to come back and bite you. So I have to tell everyone that you've got to believe in your ability, believe in the car, and believe in the best chance that you've got. Of course, sometimes that kind of looks ridiculous when you're struggling at the back of the grid, but nevertheless, sometimes you're at the front. So it does help. I think young drivers is different. If you've got somebody like a Nigel Mansell or an Alan Prost, or take it yourself that has done, 100 Grand Prix or plus, it's very difficult to be really on top of it, trying to tell them, not necessarily, you must never tell them how to drive, but you must tell them little tricks that you might have known about other people, which you learn. And I think that was a difference between, I often say, Damon Hill was not the quickest driver we've had because he'd won a world championship and he was sort of, thinking about perhaps retirement or something. But what he brought to Jordan was an ability that he knew how to win in the slowest possible time. And isn't that what Jackie Stewart used to always say? I learned how to win in the slowest possible time. Alan Prost was like that. Damon Hill was like that. And Damon Hill taught the Jordan team its best ever lesson, and that is the ability to get the car across the line first.
Yeah. Well, I saw Damon actually last week at a charity golf event that Mike Tyndall, the former England rugby player, hosts, and he was there with his wife Zara. And I went down for breakfast, and Damon, it was a very busy breakfast room at this hotel, and I didn't know Damon was there, and he's sitting all alone, and I was thinking, God, I wonder if he listens to the podcast when I've explained. Well, I didn't slag him off, I just gave a fact from the past, which is he said he was going to punch me in the face. Oh. Anyway, he never mentioned it, and unsurprisingly, because I wanted to enjoy my eggs, I never mentioned it, but I can't believe that someone hasn't said to him, Damon, they mentioned you on the podcast.
But Damon is different. He is a really well brought up soul.
Oh, a very kind man. Kind soul, as you say.
I think he went to Haberdashers. I remember going once with him.
What's a Haberdashers?
It's a very famous school in London. And he went there, and I think Chelsea were playing Arsenal, and we got a couple of tickets, and I knew he was a gooner. So I asked him, did he want to come? It's when we were it was with the team, and David Dean, who was the president of Arsenal, came, and absolutely went crazy the fact that Damon had actually turned up, and he signed the very famous Red Book in the director's room. So Damon is a very, very calm guy, and I don't think he would have brought up anything contentious, even with you, David. I would have, of course. I would have wanted to punch you in the nose. But that's why you always have a helmet close at hand when I'm around.
Exactly. Well, look, I love you too, EG. I think we're going to take one more question from our listeners, and this one actually is probably more up my street in terms of this is from Dylan, and he is saying he loved what was what had changed through the inauguration of W Series, which sadly is no longer. He's a big fan of Jamie Chadwick, who's now racing in America. It does look like it's going to be very difficult for W to be sold on as a going entity, because F1 now have the academy. And he's basically asking, is Formula One and the teams doing enough to help female racers and to make it a reality that they can become drivers in the future? I'm also involved in a foundation called More Than Equal, and we've got some brilliant team members that are behind putting together the most extensive study into the thoughts of the fans, the young girls out there in karting that have got potential to develop their skills in racing. So I'm going to sum it up by saying that I believe in the next 10 years, if not before, we will have a worthy woman racing in Formula One, because it's about creating opportunity and developing their skills in the same way that a Max or a Lewis or whoever your favourite driver is. And that just hasn't been done in the past. Have you got a quick thought on it? Or
I have a really good thought on it.
Well, you tell it and we'll tell you if it's good.
Because... I was around a time when Davina Galitza was around, and she was an amazing Olympic skier. So she had a natural good feel for things, either with snow, ice, and equally in cars. And several girls tried to make their. I think it's wrong to try and push girls into a Formula One scenario without having the previous training. The only person I think that could have done that in my time is Max's mum, because I think Max Verstappen's mother was a serious, absolutely wonderfully quick girl, and she could, without any question, have made it, in my opinion, in Formula One. But there wasn't a mechanism there to help her, and I'm not sure many of the teams would have gone to support it or whatever it was, which is wrong, and I think that has to change. And it's so sad to see the passing of the W Series, because I think technically it had everything going for it. And some of these girls, just look what's happened to girls' soccer. Chelsea won last couple of weeks. They won the FA Cup for the third time in a row. There was 70,000 people in Wembley. It's fantastic. The excitement. The current England team, they're the champions. I mean, it's just phenomenal. But I think something has to change. There isn't the appeal at a very young age. Is a girl going to go off and start karting at 5 and 7 and 8 and 9 and go through the kind of pain that your son
6.
Dayton is doing?
Yeah.
I mean, he's all over Britain, I presume, doing championships here and there, and you know how tough that is.
Sure.
And it's a big ask, but it's also big money. So there's not just one area that we have to focus on. Of course we want to see girls in the sport, but we also have to be careful that if you look at boxing, they have their own category, they have their own world championship, they have their own place in the Olympics, and you don't get a girl in a ring with Mike Tyson, do you? That's not fair either.
No,
so
absolutely.
You have
There's
to have
physical differences.
You have to have something that's reasonably understandable,
yeah.
and that's fair. Because if you put a girl in there, it doesn't matter. It would be highly unlikely to see a girl take on somebody like Tyson Fury or any of these guys. So I think it needs to be thought through, but every opportunity should be given to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's very clear physical differences in those sort of combat sports that it just wouldn't work. But I think we all agree motor racing is open to both.
It's an ideal opportunity for them.
Absolutely, and I definitely think it can change. Look, just on W Series, I was involved in helping support the founders, and what was disappointing for me after all of their efforts and all of their blood, sweat and tears and financial investment was a lot of companies that invest in motorsport currently talk about diversity and inclusion, but actually all that means is they talk about it. They don't actually
That's what I'm
put their
saying.
money where their mouth is, and hopefully that will change over time. One other thought, actually, EJ, before we wrap this up, because this is a bit of a longer podcast than normal, is you mentioned the brilliant successes of women in soccer and the amount of fans that are turning out for that. I don't know if you noticed the other night, the great success, Whisper winning a BAFTA for their work in producing the Euros, the women's Euros. So did you see our friend Sunil and all of the team there from Whisper celebrating?
Well, you know, I've known Sunil, and same as you, since mid 2000s.
Your son was one of our earliest supporters.
Could you say this on air, because I want to send you an invoice, please, to say this?
Kieran got paid. He got paid. So we don't. What do you mean send an invoice?
He doesn't recall this. Anyway, no, I'm only joking. My son Kyle, better known to everyone as Killer, indeed was part of Whisper, and he told me about this award, winning a BAFTA for somebody like one of your companies, David. You should be extraordinarily proud of the people. Just like, in a way, it's a bit like running a Formula One team. You're a driver, so you're probably now seeing a different set of circumstances by owning something like Whisper and seeing them going and being credited for the great job that they did. And honestly, anyone who watched the Euros, it was so compelling. But we were compelled to watch it because it was great football, but it was a great success. The fact that it was all done through the production of your company is well done to you. Congratulations.
Thank you
Please
very
pass
much.
it on to all and sundry.
The sincerity that was coming through in your eyes and your voice has really moved me. There was no doubt in what you just said to me.
You used the word clenched teeth. That was me. You brought that up once upon a time. I've never forgotten it, because you slagged me off badly, and I'm going to get you back.
Okay, well, look, on that lovely note, let's call it a day for another week. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we move this along and reconvene at another date for another one of these award-winning podcasts? Well, I just made that up. We haven't won any awards yet. But we will.
I've no doubt about that. But David, we'll have to think up some scams and some very interesting stories for the people.
Good. All right. Well, on that note, Mr. Jordan, thank you for your time.
Great stuff.
And I'll see you next week for another episode of Formula for Success.
You've finally got that, haven't you? Formula for... Oh, now look at that. Formula for Success.
It's the FFS that I struggle with.
You see, some people say to me, Eddie, that's... You've stroked that means something completely different.
Some people think it means for fuck's sake. But
David,
we couldn't say
say
that live on a podcast.
Of course not.
So we have to bleep that out.
I never even thought about that.
You never thought about that?
Not really. Not that I'm prepared to admit to. Anyway, wrap it up, David. Go for it. This is it.
Over and
Adios,
out.
everybody.
Ciao, ciao. Until next week.